Good evening. In an article called US has seen more than 200 mass shootings in 2022, Dre Clark, who is with News Nation, reported 6 days ago that he is reported to have said the issue of gun violence may be America's new public health crisis. I want to repeat something you heard me say a few minutes ago. There have been over 200 mass shootings in the US during the year 2022. And this is just May 31st, Tuesday, May 31st. We haven't even gotten to, we can't even say half the year has passed. That would be at the end of June. So, it's mass shootings are definitely a problem. The article that I referenced just now suggests that before the Uvalde, Texas school shooting, the largest scale mass shooting this year occurred just 2 weeks before the article was published, the article I'm referencing, and that largest scale mass shooting right before the school shooting was the racist attack on Black people, where 10 Black people were killed at the Buffalo, New York supermarket. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. 10 Black people lost their lives because of the color of their skin. In the same article, it states that the Uvalde, Texas school shooting was the 27th shooting at a K 12 school in 2022. That statistic comes from Education Week. That's an online publication. Our country must do better. In fact, our lives depend on that, on things getting better. We must make our country a safer place to live, survive, and thrive. Good evening, everybody. This is Reverend Vicki Hughes, and if you would please like and share this video, we want other people to hear what we have to say tonight. We are live on Facebook as well as YouTube Live. This is Embracing Diversity. We have a dialogue series. Several panelists come on with me. We have been bi-weekly, and as of this month, we are starting to just be once a month. But we are a group of panelists dialoguing about pertinent topics. I call myself a safe space creator. I'm your host and facilitator. So tonight's topic is discussing our most recent mass shootings, the resulting traumas that we all experience after these incidents, not just panelists on here tonight and myself, but all of us as a society. And we're also going to just kick around some ideas about potential paths to reduce all these mass shootings, mass killings, reduce violence. And we're going to talk about things like gun control, some of the gun laws, the Second Amendment. So let's get started. I have one question for my panelists to get us started. So I would like for each of you to just say one word about an emotion you're feeling, or just one word that describes how you are feeling about the significant increase in mass shootings over the last few years, in recent years. So again, just one word. Stephanie, would you like to go first?
Sure. My one word, Dr. Vicky, is resolve. Um, I I decided long ago that I had to take my defense, my self defense, into my own hands and commune with people who feel the same because apparently, it mostly Black people in America. And of course, when it comes to mass shootings, whoever the soft target is, but it seems that most Black people in America have a target on their backs from different directions. And so I have resolved that I need to take my self defense and my preservation into my own hands by expanding my plan for if anything happens in case of an active shooter, in case of a national something happening on a bigger scale. I just need to be prepared to take care of myself, because as we've seen, and hopefully we'll get into, you can't really depend on, we have an image or icons that are supposed to take care of the situation, and I just don't trust them to be to have my best interests at heart. So resolve.
Okay. The rest of you, if you would just please say one word, and then we'll get into dialogue in a minute. So, okay, who's next? Kim, do you want to go next?
I feel I actually prefer to stay in the realm that Stephanie talked about, but my one word is hopeless right now. And I hope that this conversation gives us some options instead of that.
Okay. Richard, Dr. Curry?
I would say exhausted, and I'll talk about that more in depth in the conversation.
Okay, exhausted. Okay, Trevor?
Frustrated.
Okay, and David, Attorney Dupree?
I'm sad.
Sad?
Yep.
Okay, and I don't think Vernon is on yet. So my one word is sickened. So, audience, viewers, you've heard what we've all said. There are no positive words that have been said. We're all just, I'll just repeat them: resolved, hopeless, exhausted, frustrated, sad, and sickened. And we had a viewer come on and say, I agree with each of you. Andrea Mason, thank you for your comment. So let's talk about these, the two of the most recent mass shootings. There have been some others. Let's see, 3 of us live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So there was a shooting over the weekend in Chattanooga. And I think I heard of something else today. I can't remember which state it was in. But the 2 most recent ones that made national, international news are these. Saturday, May 14th, an 18-year-old male named Peyton Gendron got in his vehicle armed with a Bushmaster XM15 rifle. He drove 3 hours. He didn't decide to turn around, go back home. What he was planning, he didn't think, oh, this isn't a good idea. He drove 3 hours with what appears to have been intent to harm, kill some Black people. He was headed to Buffalo, New York. He fired 50 shots. Gendron he ended up shooting 13 people. 11 of them were Black. 10 Black people were killed while shopping and socializing at Tops Friendly Market. That's a grocery store located in a pretty well-known Black community in Buffalo, New York. 3 other people were injured. His weapon of choice was a deadly rifle. And again, this has been viewed as a racist incident, mass shooting. He has actually admitted to that, and apparently he had filmed some of what he was doing. So that was the first one that we could talk about. And the second one, if I could briefly mention it, is this past Tuesday on May 24th, another 18-year-old male named Salvador Ramos shot his grandmother and then headed to Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. He lived in that area, so it wasn't a very far drive. He shot and killed 19 students and 2 teachers with an AR-15 rifle and wounded 17 other people. Let's chat, everybody. Who wants to start? Well, let's talk about these killings. How are y'all feeling? What do y'all have to say about these things?
Well, I'll say concerning the shooting in New York, based on the video that the shooter recorded before it was cut off and or removed from that social site. According to people I've spoken with, they tend to think that it wasn't just an 18-year-old white supremacist, self-proclaimed white supremacist that acted alone. Well, he acted alone, but his movements based off of the video showed that he had training, and the way he moved through the store, from what they saw based on their training as well, the people I spoke with, that this was not just something where some kid went and got a gun, said, I'm going to go shoot some black people. It seemed like his movements were trained. And so they tend to believe that this type of thing is something that is a plan, whatever that plan might be. And that, so it's not just something that happened and it was a guy and, had mental issues, that there's some type of plan in place to go find soft targets, people who are less likely to be in a defensive mode. And that's another reason I think that going back to my resolve, that we have to be ready at all times to defend ourselves, no matter who that person is who is bringing that intention towards us. So I'll just start with that.
Okay. Anybody want to piggyback off of what Stephanie just said? Nobody has any comments?
I think, and I agree with Stephanie. Obviously, our great nation has a problem. It has a problem with our leadership in its totality, and it's creating those situations where virtually nobody is safe. I wanted to wait to hold these comments, but I'll go ahead and say, I mean, we talk about constitutional rights, but no one has a right to take somebody else's life. And these are the issues that we're dealing with. And this whole indoctrination of hatred that's being spread around. And it's not a new concept, but it seems like it's prevalent in the days that we're living in now. And it's creating a situation where it seems like the voiceless are the ones who are paying the price. Those that are trying to just live their lives are paying the price, and that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and just for viewers, I just wanted to say, let's see, so there are 6 of us on screen right now. Dr. Richard Curry is a minister. He's a pastor of a church. Attorney David Dupree is an attorney, obviously, and he also is in ministry. I'm in ministry, and let's see, I'm just looking on screen here. So 3 of the 6 of us are in ministry. So, Attorney Dupree, do you have anything to add to what Dr. Curry said from a ministerial standpoint?
I do, and I didn't want to dominate by that, but I do, because we do have a leadership problem in this country, but we also have a followership problem in this country. We have a population that is growing up that's not following anything or anybody. We've become so strong in making sure that our rights, and that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. We're so strong in making sure that we don't have to follow, some certain set, that we've gotten away from any set. And so you have the lawless, you have the basically lifeless, because they're walking around without direction, without cause, without regard for anything except me, my mind. I mean, come on, what else? And I know this one goes back, but this one is this. I still ponder it because it bothers me. What else would cause that white boy in South Carolina who has a friend that's one of his best friends was black? How do you get to the point where one of your best friends is black, but yet you leave that best friend and go shoot up people that look like him, who invite you in and embrace you just like your friend does, offer prayer for you and everything, and then you just obliterate them? What kind of mindset, what kind of dement of mind can do that? The kind of mind that doesn't have a regard for anything except me, my mind. And so, yes, we have to be able to be individuals and all of that. But when your individualism is to the exclusive of anybody else's, then you've missed the whole point of humanity and creation. You missed the whole point of the no man is an island, because we have this population that wants to be islands, but they can't because they're not on an island. So I just stop right there for now.
Okay, I hear the anger in your voice, Attorney Dupree, and like I said, viewers, he is coming from both sides. He's an attorney, so he practices law. He actually practices criminal law, and then he's in ministry as well. So, anybody have a comment to add to what Attorney Dupree was saying?
Well, I'll just say that, I know there is a space and a place to research or to dissect why things happen. But in the meantime, people still are getting killed. So we need to go into some type of plan whereby we don't put all of our focus on why things are happening, because they're happening so fast. We need to come up with a plan. Now, whether that's the individual plan or whether that's a political plan, or it just we need to have a plan to stop this from happening, or to at least not be the next target while we work on trying to talk people off that emotional ledge that led them to want to harm somebody, and without regard to life and what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I think, Trevor, you wanted to say something? I saw you lean forward a while ago.
I was going to say that just simply that in reference to the Rev, that when he mentioned selfishness is to evil as love is to peace. It's just that simple. Selfishness is to evil as love is to peace. Because if we're going to set a standard of peace in this nation, you're going to have to forego self. And that's basically the gospel. That's all Christ talked about, was in order to give, you're going to have to, and he gave his life. He gave his life so that we can be free. Now we don't even respect the freedom that a man who did not even know, not one of us gave us all so that we could share freedom and love amongst each other. And I wanted just to add this too, is that we look so as a nation, we look so like we're better than anybody else. We look at Russia, we look at Iran, we look at all that's going on in the Middle East, like we are holier than thou, and we do nothing wrong amongst ourselves within our nation. And if you look at it, it's basically the same destruction internally that we're doing to ourselves that's going on. So we're looking at Russia and we're judging Russia, and we have the same things going on within our own household. And we're not even addressing our own household. We're talking about cutting Russia off from this, cutting Russia off from that, but we're not even talking about satisfying what's going on within our own household. That's all I had to say.
Okay, and viewers and panelists, Trevor is actually a former federal law enforcement. I don't know what your title was, officer.
Yeah, I'm also former law enforcement, military, and school teacher. So I've been in all of the environments of, I guess, a hodgepodge of all of what's going on throughout all of what's going on, from seeing it internationally from the Middle East, and from just seeing how I always thought as we went along, how even when I met a lot of my brothers in the Middle East, they would always say the U.S. always thinks they have the mantra of morality, and he says, but you guys are just as bad, or maybe even worse, because you hide and you camouflage what's really going on in your nation.
That's an interesting statement. It might be quite accurate too. Anybody want to comment? Kim, looks like you might want to comment.
I agree. We talk about Assad in Syria or wherever he is, harming his people. And yes, we are harming our own people here systematically. I agree. And I'll pause there and pass.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe we do, and I agree with Stephanie that hey Stephanie, I agree with Stephanie that we have to begin to be proactive in some regard and not always defensive or reactionary. That's the other one. We react after, but we're not doing to really prohibit some of these, except relying on the government's intel, that they're putting lists together. They have their the algorithms that are running through the different social media sites and picking up keywords and putting certain people on certain lists and things like that, and trying to figure out when and where is going to be the next one. And so that's nice from that side, but from our side, from us here in John Q. Public, we need to be able to figure out a way to be proactive in detecting who's the next cuckoo on our block and who's the next whatever, without becoming like some of our Karen counterparts that keep, mistakenly putting bona fide neighborhood persons in jeopardy just because of their conclusions based upon look or based upon outfit or based upon hair or based upon negative predilections of what they may have read or seen on TV. It's sad.
Mm-hmm. I was just looking at in this article. It's called 22 mass shootings, 374 dead. Here's where the guns came from. It's by Michael Sisak, May 27, 2022. And he was on the first, the first couple paragraphs. It says, and he's referring to the two last suspects, the one in Uvalde, Texas, and Buffalo, New York. And he said that the Buffalo suspect. I mean, I'm referencing what you were talking about, Attorney Dupree. If we could somehow recognize these mentally ill people or whatever, evil people, whatever word we want to use. In this article, it says that the Buffalo suspect, Gendron, he was taken to a hospital last year for a mental health evaluation, but the incident didn't trigger New York's red flag law, and he was still able to purchase a gun. The Texas suspect's mother told ABC after the fact that he gave her an uneasy feeling at times and could be aggressive if he really got mad. But authorities say he had no known criminal or mental health history. Again, this is the one in Texas. The state has no such red flag law. So, unfortunately, a lot of these people who are evil, some are evil, some are mentally ill. Sometimes they're able to hide whatever it is, whatever they're carrying inside. So how do we somehow figure out that there's something wrong with a lot of these people?
The problem is that mental illness is just a small fraction of what's really going on. It's the bigger problem is just pure hatred. And when you have people that are indoctrinating, I mean, we have to go back. I mean, we have to go back to January 6th. Everybody wasn't mentally ill that attacked the Capitol. Okay, that's some of these people were military people. They were actual law enforcement people. They were people just like you and I, and in fact they were the people that we meet at the water cooler oftentimes, and we have chat, and we chat with them. We talk. We give them. We talk about our families. The problem is we have a system in America that suggests, first of all, they haven't apologized for the original sin of slavery, and they just have a low regard for people that don't look like them. Okay, again, I think I said this on another broadcast. Why the people that are not Caucasian always have to use the hyphen? We're African American, Asian American. But when we talk about Caucasian folk, then they're just Americans. And that's the problem. All right. And it spills over to critical race theory. It deals with this. And all this stuff this propaganda is being promulgated day in and day out, and people are believing it. And this is what's spilling out when you keep raising up a generation of hatred people. It's spilling out, and we are the targets. Unfortunately, we are the targets.
Right, and when how do you say it? Gendron, I think that's how you say it. He was talking about the theory called replacement theory that has to do with Caucasian people feeling like they're being replaced by people of color, and the word immigrant comes up in that when you're referring to that theory. But the thing is, I say this all the time. No, Native Americans, Indians, Native Americans were the only natives in this country, so we're all immigrants, including every single white person who is living in the U.S. So, it's just interesting how some of these theories have developed and just taken flight, and then we're influencing some of the older people, middle-aged and senior citizens are influencing these young people who are believing this stuff and going and shooting up people. One thing I wanted to do, I forgot to do this in the introduction. A mass shooting is defined as an incident where 4 or more individuals get shot and killed, and that's not including the shooter. So 4 or more individuals aside from the shooter. That's what a mass shooting is. And to keep having these, I mean, these people are not just killing one person; they're killing dozens of people, and it's gotten way out of hand. Anybody else want to make a comment?
I'll just throw in, I read in the paper an incident last week, I think it was, that was in California, where this guy targeted the school and he ran over 3 students.
Experience.
And so that wouldn't be included in your mass shooting. Fortunately, all 3 of them survived. But still, just the fact that there are those things that we are easily able to quantify, and then there are those that, like this situation, where this guy had scoped out the school, had been in the school the day before, and targeted this school and ran over these students intentionally. And so here it is, hate again. Moving forward, and we have to get beyond this hate factor some way, somehow. One thing, as we say, one thing for sure, 2 things for certain. We're not getting ready to get beyond, not by vote anyway, this gun control. I mean, this Second Amendment, the way it is, because there's not going to be anything that can be agreed on quickly. And we know that there would definitely be civil war, a worse civil war, if something did occur to legally limit the amount and kinds of guns that are available in this country. I hate to point my finger, but it's just the truth. If you research and see that a lot of the same people that harp on freedom of guns, they're the same ones that are investors in a lot of the arms companies. And they're the same ones that are upset when there's not a war going on because their profits are down. So when their profits are down, they want to make sure they can get guns out so that they can still keep their profits moving in peace times, because this is their company, this is their livelihood to make this money. And I hate to say that the ones I've seen are primarily Republican. It's just out there.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. But there's a lot of things that are going on. At first, I work in law enforcement, and we can't get ammunition right now to train because of the public, because they've drove up the price. So the public can get the rounds before the law enforcement people can. And you're right. No, that's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. We're on hold for maybe a year and a half for training ammunition that I can get to tomorrow if I'm a civilian. And so yes, it is. It is capitalism at its best, and certainly it is causing problems. And I do agree, but I think there is a solution to this, and I'll hold my thoughts on that. There is a solution to a lot of the stuff that's going on, but it's going to cause for us, those who care, to come together and be on one accord. And that's been a missing link too, because there is another side to this. All right. We all have a responsibility. And there's some accountability, but just as there's some guiltiness on the other side of the fence as well, and we have to hold everyone accountable for the evil that's going on. I will say this too, as a pastor, this is America has a spiritual issue. All right, and they really do. But the problem with it is that they hide behind the shroud of religion, and how much they say they love God. However, their actions and their attitudes show different. And so again, there is some issues and some answers to this, because I believe we serve a God that's bigger than a Republican or a Democrat. But there's some things that we can do. I'll suspend that. We'll talk about that later. But again, as long as this thing is set up for these folk to win, then nothing's going to change.
Mhm. Okay. Dr. Curry and Attorney Dupree, Reverend Dupree, did either one, Dr. Curry, I'm sure you preached this past Sunday, but Attorney Dupree, did you preach as well? I was just wanting to know the topics of your sermons for the last 2 or 3 weeks, since we've had these mass killings.
Well, actually, I did not preach. It's
Okay.
been my anniversary month, but I
Okay.
did
Okay.
talk about in my Bible studies. I talked about casting all of our cares, 1 Peter 5:7, and
Okay.
and basically the basis of my message is that we Christians have to care,
Mhm.
and because Christ cared for us. And he cared for us. And because he cares for us, we have a responsibility to care for somebody else. And that's the situation. And that's what I talk about, that responsibility and accountability. And it has to be promulgated from the pulpits, because there's some certain things, I believe, y'all, that we can't even pray our way out of. And I think the moral decay of the America right now is that we're past prayer. We got to have some action go along with that prayer.
Mhm. Okay.
I agree, and I would say that caring doesn't mean that we lose focus on self-preservation. Because going back to accountability, just recently Congress approved millions of dollars to fortify uh, Capitol Hill. They voted to put more money into I don't know what they're going to fortify, because it looks like it's pretty secure. But because of January 6th, they said that we need to put more money into defending the Capitol, ignoring the fact that the day before they stormed the Capitol, there were Congress people who actually walked some of the people through who were a part of the storm. And so, ignoring the fact that when the police had the chance to stop the storm at the steps, most of them opted to not use their weapons or to not engage the people until they're practically beating you in the head with sticks and stuff. And so it's so many directions, so many things that we need to focus on, that where accountability needs to occur, but it's not. And so, what do? You care about people, you try to love people, you try to bring them into your church and pray with people, and you try to see, are you mentally okay? What's going on? And still, in the end, you end up trying to, dodge for your life. And so there are just so many things. So I agree that we should care and should focus on mental health. But in the meantime, we need to be coming up with a plan, y'all.
I would say, and you're absolutely right. But what I ended with last Wednesday was those that have been cared for have a responsibility to care for others. And let me unpack that. those that make the laws or enforce the laws have health care. So if you care, the folk that's out there ought to have health care. All right. You have an entourage. These folk are being cared for, have an entourage. They're not being attacked. They're not running up not in the Capitol anymore. So they're being taken care of. Then everybody should be taken care of. And it's not because I'm any bigger or better than anyone. We have to have that moral fabric that I care about those students in school. I care about the sanctity of life. I care about my fellow brethren, no matter what border they come from. And so my point is that America has created this situation where the have and the have-nots. All right, and if you have it, we'll take care of you. If you're not, it's not. No. There's an accountability issue, and it's got to be because you're being cared for. I can see if this was the Wild West, okay, where everybody just pulling guns on everybody, but that's not the case. Statistics show it happens where people are not being taken care of.
Trevor, do you have any comments or Attorney Dupree? It looks like David, you have one of you all.
Yeah.
Looks like somebody's about to talk. Wants to talk.
I agree with quite a bit the brother was saying, what Brother Curry was saying, but when we look at situations, even in our local community, we had a female pastor, and she was working with a young and he was a brother. She worked with a young brother who was transitioning. He had just served I think 2 or 3 years in prison. So she was working through him through her personal ministry as a pastor. She was ministering to him as far as his transition was concerned, and she was a pastor also, and he killed her. So that happened in Georgia, and to me that should have been outrage from the household of faith. It's that now. Right. We have to, as the household of faith, address. We got to do a lot more than try to fill pews and collect offerings if we're not offering people the efficient help that they need mentally. If we know, we would always say, oh, we'll just come up with we use the catchy phrase, that's a reprobate mind, but we don't really dig into what's really going on and how can we get him help? Not just send him to dial 466-8552. No, let's get him or her some real help.
Mm-hmm. I read that story, Trevor. I was so saddened by that. You know, here you are in ministry and you're trying to help somebody and you end up dead because of it. It's really sad. Are you all having I mean, I know some of y'all are in ministry and everything, but we all have other jobs. Are you all having, initiating or a part of conversations going on in the workplace, in your neighborhoods, or wherever in the community? Are people talking about things? Because I don't experience that here where I live. A few of you all are from the same city, so I mean, it's kind of hush hush here. But does anybody else have any experience in conversations with people of different ethnicities, different generations, just talking about things that are going on and how we can somehow try to help people or just get past all this violence and senseless killings?
Well, unfortunately, I work in law enforcement, and a lot of the folk that are in law enforcement that I talk to pretend they don't have an answer, and just saying it's going to continue. And I just had that discussion today. I said, man, I can't accept that. I can't accept that it's just going to continue. Something has to be done. It cannot continue to be that way. But then, you know, you hear they politicize it all the time. I mean, where it's just mental health, or if it's just now. I don't think you can just put it in all in one basket, whether it's mental health or whether it's gun rights and this and that. I think though, but to do nothing, not even to have the conversation. Can I say this? Somebody posted on social media that we talked more about Will Smith smacking what's
Chris
that?
Rock.
Chris
Rock.
Rock than we
Mhm.
have talked about Buffalo.
I saw that. I saw that, and it's true. That went on for days. It was on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter for days. And I mean, we don't even know the people, and people were arguing back and forth. Everybody had different viewpoints. Yeah, that was more important than people getting killed and people trying to get along. That's really sad.
I think part of the problem is that it's become mainstream. It's become, we're not surprised by it anymore. This is daily. We're almost expecting something to happen. Unfortunately, when we're expecting people to have things to happen, then and no results to occur from it, then people turn themselves off. I posted about this on my Facebook about this dialogue we were going to have. I posted twice today. One was about toxic supervisors, and man, I got 100 likes off of that. But I posted about talking about this, man, it's crickets. And I mean, I don't know. I think people are tired. And we really don't want to solve, well, we don't really have any answers. I have some answers though, but I'll suspend that for later.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about gun control and some other things in a minute. I wanted to find out about how you all. I want to throw this out there. How have you all been traumatized by the recent violence, the recent mass shootings? Specifically for those of us who are African American on here, what about the Buffalo, New York situation? I mean, these people were shopping for groceries and ended up dead. So has this caused you all trauma? And if so, in what ways? Or how have you changed how you're living your lives, if you have, based on some of the things that are happening, like that one?
Dr. Vicky, I do a weekly podcast, if you will, and I opened that a couple of days ago by saying, which we probably had come to this realization already, but there are no safe spaces. You to hide from random gun violence. There, it's in school, it's in church, it's at the grocery store, it's at the club, it's on the street. And if you're Black in America, it might be at your house, okay, depending on the police department that you're working with, okay? So I feel traumatized, because of all that I just said. And then to have the courage to speak on it might bring more attention to me, and that's traumatizing. But that hasn't stopped me from, in my little world, speaking my mind, because I'm like, if you don't live for something, if you're not convicted about something, what's the point in living? What's the point in having rights? And so that is traumatizing. How has it changed me as a Second Amendment person, an advocate? It used to be that I had my license to carry and I carried every now and then, but now I every day carry. In fact, the other day I was taking some items to the recycling bin. I live in a condo community. It's across the parking lot. And I had my weapon on my hip and I kind of forgot about it because I was on the phone carrying the bag, got my weapon, all of this. And then one of my white neighbors passed by and he gave me that look like, oh Lord, she's serious. And so, yeah, I'm serious because somebody is making it be that serious that I have to say, you know what? I have to actively arm myself, because if it happens where there's an active shooter in my vicinity, I want to have the option to is it my best option to run, or is it my best option to shoot back? And that's how it has changed me, because I have to give myself options.
Mhm. Okay. So how many people, how many panelists own guns? I don't. I have a taser. That's it. How many people own guns? Vernon, see you raising your hand. Trevor, Richard, and Stephanie. Okay. So about half own guns.
Dr. Vicky, yes, and amen to all that Stephanie said. Let's see. At one point, my arsenal included an SKS, 45 or 40 cal, 238s, and a shotgun. However,
Okay.
due to economic circumstances, I sort of downsized. So I'm actually rebuilding my arsenal. But the trauma, and I don't know if everybody saw when the, can't remember the congressman's name, but he came on talking about how the kids at that experienced the trauma at Sandy Hook have a specific word that they say when they're feeling traumatized. And that was very telling and very significant to me, because the way the media, especially when we have law enforcement officials killing Black and brown people indiscriminately, and you see that and they just show it, and they show everything but the, when they're actually shot. That's trauma to me. That is something that my brain is like, oh my God, seeing this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I feel for the kids. I do. I hurt. I ache for them, my empathy. But my thing is, what about us and our trauma? We get to the point where it's just sort of kind of, you just sort of, okay, this happened, but it's in our psyche, it's in our mind, and it hurts. It's deep. It's the same kind of trauma when you go back and think about how our ancestors endured slavery, how they endured the trauma of rape and murder and Jim Crow and the lynching. It's still trauma, and we sort of we're at that point where we just sort of, okay, but we're not dealing with it. We're just sort of, okay, I'm putting this in a compartment. We're compartmentalizing it, but we're not actually discussing it and talking about our hurt, talking about our pain. I'm sick. I'm so tired, of these things happening. And it just continues to happen, like, okay, this is, normalizing American behavior. This is normal. And all of the news media, they say, America has the highest rate of this kind of violence. But it's crazy. It is really, and how do you deal with that? Go see, it's like, we all need counseling, because it's real. It's real trauma that we continue to be subjected to. We're subjected to it on the news every day, especially when someone Black gets killed by someone law enforcement. We're subjected to, okay, they show it over and over and over, 1,000 times a day. You see it on every channel. So my thing, beyond prayer is like, Lord, help me. Let me talk to somebody. Let me help me to and love my brother Trevor, because Trevor's my brother, my frat brother, and all of that. And we talk. We sort of hash out things. So that helps me maintain my sanity, because I'm like, I'm not crazy. This is abnormal. This is abhorrent. This is not what a normal society does. This is not how normal society, especially a so-called advanced, educated society, does, period.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Vernon, I can relate to everything you just said. Let's see, I guess it was in summer of 2020. Well, I don't know if viewers know, I'm a hospital chaplain, and I typically work second shift, but I have had, when I first started at this particular hospital where I'm working, I was, the night shift, I believe, was from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. After George Floyd was murdered, and I can't remember how far ahead of that, Breonna Taylor was killed in her home. Anyway, I developed this fear of a lot of things. So I actually told my boss at the time, and now I have a new chaplain supervisor, I refuse to work night shift, because at the hospital where I work now, I cannot, now they're trying to work out things where those of us who are chaplains can stay on site. But until that happens, I will not be getting paged at 3 o'clock in the morning. I live 20 minutes away. I have to get on the freeway to get to the hospital where I work. I'm not going to be out at 3 o'clock in the morning or 5 a.m. when it's dark and I get stopped by a police officer or someone who pretends to be one. I end up dead when if I was supposedly speeding or whatever. So, it could be some false accusation or something. But I changed my work schedule. And also, this past Friday, I went to Kroger. I don't know if everybody on here has Kroger store. It's a grocery store wherever you live, any grocery store. I walked into Kroger to shop in the middle of the afternoon, and I had just gone into the entrance, and I was getting a cart, one of the big carts. I knew I was going to do some major grocery shopping, but I turned and I saw in the entrance, through the door, a car had driven up there and was parked, and I actually had fear. I saw 2 or 3 younger white guys, probably like late teens, early 20s, and they were parked there for a few minutes, and nobody got out. And so I'm like, okay, what's something about to happen? I mean, you fear things like that. They ended up driving away. I don't know what they were doing, but my mind went back to the Buffalo situation where people were killed shopping. So, racial trauma, the fear is real. Anybody else have any examples of how they, fear they felt going to just anywhere out in public?
I feel the same way I felt when the sniper was making his rounds in the DC area. I lived in DC at the time, and I go get some gas, and there were people at the gas station who would be ducking and hiding behind the car and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't. And I'm not packing or anything like that, but at the same time, I'm of the mindset and that I'm gonna believe this God of the Bible. I'm gonna believe it, even if it takes me to my grave. I'm gonna believe that there is a God who is able to do the exceeding abundantly. I'm believing that there's a God that says, if you trust in me with all your heart and don't lean to your all understanding. In all your ways to me, then I'm going to direct your path. I'm going to believe that God that says, if you abide in me and let your word, if you abide in me and let my word abide in you, then you can ask what you will and it shall be done. I'm going to believe that God that says, let this mind be in you is also in Christ Jesus. So I believe that if we can get more of that mindset out there instead of the mindset that I see so often that says America first, then God. That mindset. Or the other mindset that they try to force on us that says that church is for curing the social ills. And they put that above and then God is second. You know, we got a dichotomy that puts God second, whether it's on the white side or whether it's on the black side. And then I'm hearing good stuff like the legion of missionaries that are coming from China and from Africa that are determined to evangelize the United States because they see this problem and they're going to bring the real God of the Bible back to the country that tried to evangelize them, but they've learned the real God of the Bible. And so I believe if we get the real God of the Bible to these neighborhoods and to these people, that maybe some change can happen and that we don't walk in fear, but we stand in faith. You know, that we walk in a liberty whereby he's made us free and not be entangled in yokes of bondage, whether it's a bondage of racism, whether it's a bondage of fear, whether it's a bondage of not being able to get past slavery, which I admit I haven't either. But, you know, I'm still not bound. I'm not letting that guide my every move. You know, it's there, but I don't live in it. And so I'm moving past that and developing a different mindset that is going to help me shape and shake things so that others can shift and change. You know, otherwise we'll do like what the old folks are doing now. They're sitting on the porch and talking about, oh, it's getting so bad. Oh, it's getting so bad. And not having any solutions except to go out early to the grocery store and get back in as soon as they can. So they can sit on the porch and talk about, oh, it's getting so bad.
Well, you know what? Let me ask Reverend Dupree a question. So, based on your comments, then would you say that the people who were at the Emmanuel AME Church that they are sacrificial lambs? I mean, those people, they didn't fear. And I don't think I have fear because I carry a weapon. But going back to what you're saying is like you are just trusting in God to make sure you're okay. And if you're not okay, then that was his will. So is that what you're saying about the people who brought Dylan in and prayed with him, but that was God's will that they die from this racist white dude who wanted to come up in church and kill them?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I am saying that God can use that. He can
Of
use
course.
that
Of
for
course.
his glory. And the thing that we have to do is not focus on the retaliatory aspect of it, but to focus on the good of it. Is that, yes, this is what we are yet called to do. This is yet what we do in ministry, is we reach out and we try to give, as Mary says, a little more Jesus to those who don't have or who haven't been able to find that path. And so we do reach out and continue in that, but we don't exalt the need for social pandering, as it will, to go above the need for them to get the Christ of the Bible. And so, yes, they were doing right. They were doing, and in some regard, yes, that is something that we have to look at and see that there was something very sacrificial about that should continue to cause us to think and ponder and to reflect, but to take that which we should take, which is that they're in there studying the Bible and about doing good, praying for this young man, as we should, instead of saying we need to pass out more meals. Not saying anything's wrong with that. That's a good thing. But, I'm talking about those. There was this church that shut down here recently. It was Episcopal church. And as they went through the Episcopal church, we saw about 4 or 5 freezers that were stocked with food. And because they were busy, working to help feed the neighborhood and things like that. But I wonder, and I wasn't there, and so I don't know, but I wonder, did they give them as much God as they gave food, or were they just intending to let their light shine, which is good. But if your light is kind of hid under a bushel because of your thoughts and the way you perceive God in the first place, then you have a problem. Your perception is already blocked because you think that because you want to clear your conscience from 400 years of social ills of slavery, that feeding a meal twice a week is going to do that. And you're not doing it out of sincerity of heart. You're doing it out of trying to, quote unquote, make things right. And so we're lost again. So I'm conflicted, as you can see, a lot, but I do believe that the answer is still Christ.
Definitely, the answer is still Christ. But to answer and to just piggyback on what Dr. Dupree said concerning God's will, God has a perfect will, but He also has a permissive will. Anything that happens, God either sent it or He allowed it. Okay, and that's important to know, because anything else, that means God was asleep on the job, and that's not the case. He's sovereign. I believe evil breeds evil, and there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that, as Dr. Dupree said, is complicity of the church, where we are concerned with crowds, we are concerned with other stuff instead of bringing folk to Christ. And when you don't bring folk to Christ, you can't do what I call at my church feel good ministry to make yourself feel good, because it doesn't solve. Only Christ, as He said, is the answer. But to clear that up, if it happened, God allowed it, and so it was His permissive will to allow that to go on, to show us to always glorify Him. And so that's important to understand as we're dealing with that. I'm helpless, but I'm not hopeless. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's an answer to this problem. There is an answer to this problem, but again, until we get the kingdom mindset, when Jesus says, "Upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it," and I've given you keys to lock and unlock. So we have the authority to do to do God's will. He's left the church in charge. However, sometimes the church has an identity crisis. All right.
Mhm.
And when we have an identity crisis, or when we're sold out, or when we want to make Jesus a donkey or an elephant, or when we want to make the flag our God, or whatever the case may be, then God shows us that you cannot replace me. And these are the evil things that go on. But there is an answer. Again, there's an answer.
Okay, let's talk. Let's shift to some of the answers. We have about 20 minutes left, so let's talk about some of the answers. What can we do to?
Reverend Vicky,
Yeah.
one of the things, and just what Dr. Dupree and Dr. Curry said was just so much. But one of the things that I got, probably this time last year, in terms of all of this kind of stuff happening, at my son's orientation at Morehouse, Dean Lawrence Carter, and I know you remember Dean Carter, the dean of the chapel at Morehouse. One of the things he said that really rocked me, he said, you must learn to respect the human dignity of even your oppressors, which was just it.
Wow.
Literally, I'm sitting there in the assembly for the orientation, and tears just stream from my eyes, because it's like, is that how deep God is? And that actually brought me to begin reading again. And I actually picked up my copy of Dr. Howard Thurman's book, Jesus and the Disinherited. And I went through that again.
Good read.
And oh my God, it's like, I have no words, because it was so deep and spiritual, but then at the same time, it was so simple. It's like, when Dr. Thurman talked about the oppressed and backs against the wall and the disinherited, but then he said, he actually talked about how Jesus had to deal with the Jews, his people, the Hebrews, and then he had to also deal with the Roman leadership, and it was just like, oh my God, what, how do you do all of this at the same time? As Dr. Dupree and Dr. Curry said, being conflicted, because your humanity says, I want retribution, I want to see justice, but then the divinity in you, the God in you says, but thus saith the Lord, I got to look at, this is my brother still. Even though they've done all manner of evil, I've still got to look at you as God looks at you. And it's just so, it's mind-blowing. Because it's like, once again, a mere human, it's like, wow, okay, how do I do this? How do I really take all of this in and synthesize it and make it so that I can love my neighbor as myself, love God, love my neighbor, but at the same time, I'm hurt because of this evil. And I see this evil, and this evil continues, and it's an ongoing evil, and it's systematic. So I don't know what to say, Dr. Vicky. I'm vexed.
I mean, here in Knoxville, at the hospital where I work, I see God doing some things there. As a hospital chaplain, I go into patients' rooms we all, well, for viewers and panelists who don't live in this area, Attorney Dupree, you can tell me, is the Black percentage of people of color is about 10% here? So the hospital, so he's shaking his head, yes. So the hospital where I work is, they're predominantly Caucasian patients. And I'm finding, well, this has gone up for several months. I will go in and I'm going in to talk to a patient, and sometimes family members are in the room. I'm wanting to talk about, find out about their emotional, spiritual, mental well-being. And some of them, whether I have, I'll talk to them, sometimes I have just prayed, and they are starting conversation with me about the black and white thing. They are wanting to just learn more. They're wanting to express how they feel. I was in a room last night, and I prayed for the person who had a new health diagnosis, and talked to he and his wife, and then he said, "Oh, can I?" He said, "I want to say something," and his wife didn't know what he was going to say, so she kind of was trying to hush him, and he said it anyway. He said, "No, I want to say this. I'm just so sick of this black white thing. We're all human beings. We are all the same." He started this conversation, and so I'm finding opportunities like that more and more in a hospital setting where people are sick and just suffering, and they're thinking about life and humanity and things like that. So I just wanted to add that.
Those are great points, and certainly we cannot discount the spiritual aspect of this, because we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a practical side of this as well. When Nehemiah wanted to do reform in Jerusalem, he prayed. All right. But after he prayed, he went to the king. Okay. And to get permission. And so we have a blueprint that somehow has been thrown away. Dr. King had a great blueprint, an awesome blueprint of how to deal with any issue that may occur, especially racism. We dealt with that. And what we have to do, we have to come together as like-minded Christians, because only love can stomp out hate. But also we have to build a kingdom, or get people around us who have that like-mindedness to get this done. The truth of the matter is everything is shrouded behind some legislation. Okay, whether it's gun laws or whatever. And I never figured out why folk was flocking to be politicians, but I understand when you're a politician and you can control this stuff, you can rule the world. So what has to happen is that we have to build that kingdom, as Dr. Dupree talked about, by spreading the gospel. But we need to, as my good friend Dr. Buster Soaries do, we have to put people in positions that can make those calls. When he was in New Jersey, he actually reformed his neighborhood because everybody on the city council belonged to his church. They were Christians. So what we have to do is we have to challenge those accountability on those levels and find out what they're voting for. And in my community, in the hood, a lot of our Black politicians run unopposed. So they don't have to show up. They don't have to have an agenda. They don't have to do those things. And so we're giving folk free passes in this. And civil rights didn't happen because we just prayed. That Civil Rights Act, because the pressure was on Lyndon Baines Johnson. And we have to come through that. The other piece of that as well, and people are scared of this, but they got to have that allyship. We got to have that. We have to have folk. If you look at Dr. King, he had folk of every background surrounding him to push that agenda. Here's what I know about politicians. Politicians will not move until they're uncomfortable. And that's on both sides of the fence. So We got to quit voting for folk because they black or because they white, and find out what their agenda is. Because if we vote them in, certainly we can vote them out and put folk in that have our agenda. The kingdom, not our agenda, but the kingdom agenda. So that we can save this stuff. If we can send billions of dollars over to Ukraine, surely we can take some of that money and put it to use in America. And so my point is that I'll end by saying this. I presented this plan to some clergy in my I just won't name the names. I presented this to some clergy. They're scared of this plan because now it's going to take away your grant money. Okay, it's going to take away. It's going to take away that hush money. You're going to have to stand for something, and I think we need a coalition of people who stand for something. Then what we can do, we can replicate this city by city. Because everybody has someone in their city who's not standing right. And until we come together, and you want to know why God ain't moved? Because God can't stand confusion. There's no unity.
Amen, brother.
All right. Well,
I'll leave it right there. I'll leave it right there.
I was reading an article earlier, and it's called "Is Republican Resistance to Gun Control Finally Breaking?" This is by Ewan Palmer. It was written on 5/30/22. So this was after the Uvalde, Texas shooting. So in here, it's talking about GOP reps like Chris Jacobs of New York, Adam Kinzinger. I know he's about to retire, but he's Illinois. They have both said they would support a ban on AR-15s in the country, as well as ending the sale of high-capacity magazines and raising the legal requirement to purchase other firearms. And then other GOP Republicans like Senators Susan Collins from Maine and Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania have used the Robb Elementary School shooting to reiterate their longstanding calls for expanding background checks for gun buyers in order to help prevent mass shootings occurring. Senator Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, we all know who he is, has also called on Texas Senator John Cornyn, Texas, to lead negotiations with Democrats in order to find a compromise on gun laws. What do y'all think about what I just read? This is in this article. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, Connecticut, said he is somewhat hopeful that there could be bipartisan support to implement change in the current laws in the wake of the Uvalde attack. So what's that all about? What do y'all think?
Well, I'm gonna say something right fast, and then because I know people have something to say. So if you look at New York has some of one of the most strictest gun laws in the country. Texas has one of the most relaxed gun regulations in the country. So they're on polar opposite sides of the gun law situation. So having, and so I'm not saying, I know we could do better with background checks and having a universal, laws on that, but a criminal doesn't care about the law. So even if they change the law or they don't change the law, only law-abiding citizens are going to actually do what they have said or make the change. Criminals are going to get the guns. I mean, you can create a weapon on your computer these days, plastic stuff, and put it together. You don't need to necessarily go buy a weapon. You can make a weapon. So therein lies the issue. It's not necessarily about changing the law. It's about something else. And so because criminals don't care, they're looking for soft targets to shoot for whatever their end game is. So we have to keep that in mind when we talk about, well, we need to have stricter this or laxer this, or it's really, we're talking about people who don't care about that. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm. Kim or Trevor, you haven't talked to her in a while. Either one of y'all have any comments?
Can I piggyback on what Stephanie said?
Yes.
It's kind of interesting and cool to hear that from your perspective. I think legislation is important because it demonstrates the will of this nation to stop these massacres. Yes, criminals will still get guns, but also we have this illness of white supremacy, and it is just, and we have a spiritual illness, as one of the other pastors said about me and mine. I, me and mine. We have that illness. We are completely blind to what we have historically done to whoever we had to do it to build our nation and our generational wealth. And so it's about legislation, it's about better mental health, and it's about confronting white supremacy in my little realm. I would have to do some more studying to think about how to talk through that. But yeah, I think it's kind of at the tippy top of my agenda is who are these people promulgating these ideas and indoctrinating these children to do these horrible things. So that is where I will pass. Thank you.
Okay, and Kim is, she currently lives in Knoxville. So there are a few of us in Knoxville. Stephanie is from Knoxville. So, but I just want to say I've known Kim for, gosh, it's been 2 years now, I think, 1 to 2 years, and she is an awesome ally. We need more Caucasian allies like her. Trevor, do you have any comments?
Well, one thing about our nation, our nation is unique. Our nation always, if you follow the dollar, you'll follow the problem. So if we really want to, I think if we really just want to adjust it, tweak it just a bit, it's just like the insurance companies. Put a hefty tax on weapons of mass destruction. So if it's $1,200 now for an AR, you got to pay $10,000, and the other $8,800 goes to resource officers, mental health. So you tax those things that are attacking the community, and you use it to buy the resources to help the community. So, and then now the politicians understand that. That's what they understand. They understand the dollars and cents. And then you can say, now we need this money to put resource officers in each school. So we're going to tax everybody, even if they're buying rounds, they're buying weapons, whatever they're buying, they're going to be taxed heavily. And we're going to be able to support counselors in schools. We're going to be able to count resource officers. Stores are going to be able to hire security guards. So now we're going to use all of the resources to defend that, and to defend it, come at it from multiple areas of defense, not only just weapons, but also counseling and also training and also teaching. But we'll have the funding. That's what the politicians want to have. Where is the funding coming from? Well, the funding will come from the taxes that we'll put on these particular weapons. If you start taxing rounds, and the rounds, money from the rounds start being diverted into areas that are going to protect the community from a mental and from a physical and from a weaponry standpoint, it'll change the way things are thought about.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? We're at about 9 o'clock, so we can go a few minutes over, but does anybody have any closing comments or anything they would like to say?
I'll say that Second Chronicles 7:14 still applies. America has a pride issue. And so when they talk about you in my thoughts and prayers, now we need to humble ourselves and then pray, and then seek God's face, and then turn from our wicked ways. And then he promised the promises that he says, then I'll forgive your sins and I'll heal your land. And so we have a pride problem. And it's not just politicians. We got preachers with pride problems. We got teachers with pride problems. We've got basketball stars with pride problems. Until we humble ourselves and begin to care and seek God's face, then our land will never be healed. And so that's my prayer. That's my prayer for our nation, that we would humble ourselves. And you know what? These shootings are humbling. They're humbling. And I often say nothing's going to change till a certain person gets shot. But we need to humble ourselves. And that's the message that I have for America today.
Mhm. Anybody else? Attorney Dupree, looks like you might want to say something.
Not really, because I don't want to be a downer. But you know, especially with all the upbeat that I've talked, but at the same time, I do in response to the article that you talked about, I'm skeptical.
Mhm.
You know, I know a lot of times the talk is right when it's time to get reelected.
Mhm.
And, you know, especially with midterms coming up, you know, so a lot of people are going to say the right thing because they want to make sure that their constituency, or what hasn't been their constituency, becomes their constituency and stays with them. And so it's popular right now to get on the save a life boat, you know.
Right.
And so I would like to see if some of these that are talking very well in the newspaper will also talk that same strength in the paper that we don't see, which is the legislative paper, that is the next bill, the next law that is supposed to
Mhm.
be passed. You
Mhm.
know, it'll come strong in the paper, newspaper, but it'll be watered down when it comes to the legislature. And so
Right.
we'll watch as well as pray.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I'll add, going back to what Dr. Curry said about, nothing will change until the right person or a significant person is shot or affected. You would think children, innocent children, would be that person, those people, but time and again, that hasn't made a difference in how the legislators feel about changing the laws. And so, it's like the most innocent person, the most innocent people are being affected, yet still there's no change. So I just don't know who that person would be if it's not a baby, if it's not somebody's baby. I don't know who it would be.
Mhm. What hurts me the most about that situation was that, now we're hearing about the delayed response time of the officers who were in the building, and they were getting a direction from a police chief. Apparently, I don't know where that police chief was outside of that school, but those kids, a lot of those kids called for help and they were ignored. So, that just hurts me so bad.
And you know what, that goes back to, and I, I'm not like Rambo Ed or anything, but that goes
Mhm.
back to, you can't wait for people to save you. You can't wait because, whether we go back to 9/11, when they said people were waiting for help and other people started going down the steps. You got to start taking action, whatever that action is. We cannot sit here and wait for folks. You it might be automatic to call 911 since they developed 911 30 years ago, whatever it was. But at some point we have to realize our safety lies within us. If something goes down, you need to have a plan. You need, just like they do fire drills at school, you need to be doing a fire drill at your house, around your car, in the grocery store, looking at the exits or something. Just
Mhm.
I promise I'm finished.
I did that. Well, now I haven't been to the movies for a couple years because of COVID, but I used to do that after the Colorado shooting with the Joker. I don't even remember his name, but when he shot up all these people, I as soon as I walked into the theater, I was looking at the exits But I was also thinking about how, if something happened, how could I get myself out and help some other people? That was my mindset. So, anybody else?
My last comment.
Okay. Okay.
One of the things that I sort of have discerned is that it seems like in God's economy, in order for change to go forth, there has to be a blood sacrifice. It began long before Jesus, but Jesus was the ultimate blood sacrifice. But every time we have progressed in this nation, there's been a blood sacrifice. When Dr. King, things didn't, Dr. King was leading the movement. And then when he got killed, it took him dying, getting his brains blown out for the civil rights legislation to actually be signed into law. So I just, it's one of the things that's just sort of, it hurts and it pains me, but it just seems as though there has to be a blood sacrifice in order for things to change or begin to change for the better in our country, sadly.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else? It's about time for us to end. We've gone about 7 minutes over. Trevor, looks like you want to say something? No? Kim? Anybody? Okay. Okay, thank you, panelists, for joining me tonight. This has been a really rich conversation. We've covered all angles, discussed different aspects of this. I pray for, and I hope that we will all pray for the victims, well, deceased victims, and survivors of those victims were in the Buffalo shooting, as well as this Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And hopefully we can just all do our parts, panelists and viewers, to try to make this world a better place. We need to be talking to people. And if we see or sense warning signs in people, if we somehow figure out how to get them help, that would help our country, and the world. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you, viewers, for watching. I just want to end with, let there be peace on earth. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Amen. Amen.